the Two Faces of Scorpio, a side that no one tells. Have you ever wondered why Scorpio is the only zodiac sign that carries 3 different symbols? The venomous scorpion crawling on earth, the majestic eagle soaring in the heights, and the phoenix rising from its own ashes. 3 faces, 3 destinies, 1 single sign. But here's what nobody tells you. There's a 4th face, hidden, silent, that not all Scorpios can reach. And this secret face is so powerful, it can transform an ordinary Scorpio into something almost supernatural. Today you'll discover the 2 most impactful faces of Scorpio, those that define whether they'll be your greatest ally or your worst nightmare. And I guarantee you, after this video, you'll never look at a Scorpio the same way again. Before we dive into this deep ocean of revelations, I need you to do 3 things right now. Subscribe to the channel, because content like this you won't find just anywhere. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any zodiac secrets we're still going to reveal. And leave in the comments, do you live with any Scorpio? Or better yet, are you a Scorpio? I want to know who will have the courage to recognize themselves in the truths we're going to expose here today. Scorpio is not just any sign. While other signs play on life's surface, Scorpio dives into the abyss. They're not afraid of the dark, because the dark is their home, their sanctuary, the place where they feel most alive. And it's precisely this intimate relationship with shadows that makes them so fascinating and at the same time so dangerous. Imagine an ocean at night. The surface seems calm, almost inviting. You even feel like diving in. But when you put your foot in the water, you realize there's something down there, something ancient, something that observes before acting. That's Scorpio's energy, silent, deep, loaded with an intensity you only feel when you're already completely involved. Scorpio's first face is magnetic. They don't need to shout to be noticed, don't need to make a scene to get attention. Their mere presence already provokes something in people around them. It's as if they emanate an invisible frequency that attracts and repels. At the same time, you want to get closer, but something inside you whispers, "Careful." And you know why? Because Scorpio sees through you. They don't look at what you show. They see what you hide. That fake smile, that well-rehearsed lie, that social mask you wear every day. For Scorpio, all of this is transparent as glass. They read between the lines, notice contradictions, feel vibrations. It's almost as if they have a built-in emotional detector. But this ability to see the truth isn't just a gift. It's also a curse. Because when you can see beyond appearances, it becomes harder to trust, harder to believe, harder to surrender. And that's where Scorpio's second face is born. That shadow everyone fears, but few truly understand. This second face doesn't come out of nowhere. It's built layer by layer, each betrayal, each disappointment, each moment when Scorpio gave their soul and received coldness in return. They're not born vengeful. They become so. They're not born suspicious. They learn, and when they learn, they never forget. Scorpio's duality is so extreme that sometimes it seems like 2 different people inhabit the same body. On one side, the healer capable of embracing your deepest wounds without judgment. On the other, the destroyer who can use your own vulnerabilities against you if they feel betrayed. And here's the most important detail. Scorpio doesn't lose control. They don't act on impulse like Aries or change their mind like Gemini. When Scorpio decides to act, every move has been calculated, every word has been weighed, every silence has a purpose. They're the silent strategist of the zodiac, the chess player who thinks 10 moves ahead while you're still trying to understand the rules of the game. But make no mistake, behind all this intensity, there's extreme sensitivity. Scorpio feels everything amplified. A joy for them isn't just happiness, it's ecstasy. A sadness isn't just melancholy, it's an abyss. A love isn't just affection, it's obsession. Everything in them is more, never less. And it's precisely because they feel too much that they learn to protect themselves by building emotional walls that very few people can cross. Now answer me in the comments. Have you ever felt Scorpio's intense energy? That look that seems to read your soul? That presence you can't ignore even when trying? Leave it down here because I want to know if you've crossed paths with the magnetic face or the shadow face of this sign. In the next few minutes, we're going to dissect every aspect of these two faces. We're going to reveal secrets that most astrologers don't tell. We're going to dive so deep into the Scorpio psyche that you'll understand not just the behavior of this sign, but the reason for existing behind every action, every choice, every silence loaded with meaning. Get ready because this journey won't be superficial. We're going to the depths, and whoever dives too deep with Scorpio either transforms completely or comes back different from what they were. Let's talk now about something that intrigues everyone who truly knows a Scorpio. How can someone have so much power without needing to shout, without needing to show off, without needing to prove anything to anyone? The answer lies in the energy that Scorpio naturally carries. It's a dense, heavy, magnetic energy. When a Scorpio enters a room, even if they stay quiet in a corner, everyone feels it. It's not necessarily a conscious feeling. It's something that happens at an instinctive, primitive level. Your body recognizes an alpha presence even before your mind processes who arrived. And here's the secret. Scorpio doesn't compete for attention. They simply exist with such intensity that it becomes impossible to ignore. While other signs are trying to impress, tell funny stories, make social performances, the Scorpio is there, observing everything with that penetrating look that seems to dissect every movement, every word, every breath. This look, by the way, is perhaps the most striking characteristic of Scorpio's first face. It's not a common look. It's a look that pierces through. When a Scorpio fixes their eyes on you, it feels like they're accessing files of your soul you didn't even know existed. They see the insecurity you hide behind arrogance. They notice the fear you disguise with aggressiveness. They detect the neediness you camouflage with indifference. And the most impressive part, they do this effortlessly. It's not a technique they learned. It's simply how they process the world. Scorpio doesn't see surfaces. They see layers. They don't just hear words. They hear what wasn't said. They don't just observe actions. They perceive intentions. But let's go further. Because this magnetism isn't just visual or energetic. There's also a powerful psychological dimension to it. Scorpio has the ability to make people feel truly seen. And that's something rare, almost addictive. We live in a world of shallow interactions, superficial conversations, disposable connections. And suddenly someone appears who really listens to you, who really observes you, who really wants to know what's behind the social mask. This is the healing power of Scorpio's first face. They create a safe space where you can be vulnerable, where you can take off your armor, where you can show your wounds without fear of judgment. And when Scorpio decides to use this gift for good, they become a life transformer. How many people have completely opened up to a Scorpio and left that conversation different, lighter, more aware? But attention, this same ability can be used manipulatively. And here we begin to see how Scorpio's two faces are always intertwined, always dancing with each other. Because knowing someone's deepest secrets is having enormous power over that person. And Scorpio knows this. They always know. Scorpio's intensity also manifests in how they dedicate themselves to things. This sign doesn't know how to do anything halfway. If they decide to study something, they'll study until they completely master it. If they decide to work on a project, they'll dive in body and soul. If they decide to train their body, they'll take it to the extreme. There's no lukewarmness in the life of an authentic Scorpio. There's fire, or there's ice. There's everything, or there's nothing. This characteristic makes Scorpio extremely successful in areas that require depth: psychology, investigation, scientific research, surgery, therapy, everything that involves diving deep and not being afraid to find what's hidden. Scorpio isn't afraid of blood, isn't afraid of pain, isn't afraid of uncomfortable truths. They go to the bottom because that's where the really interesting things happen. And in the professional field, this intensity translates into an almost frightening determination. When Scorpio wants something, they don't give up. It can take years. It can require enormous sacrifices. It can seem impossible to everyone around. But they continue, silently, strategically, relentlessly. And when they finally conquer, it even seems easy. But only they know how many battles they fought in the shadows to get there. Now let's talk about something few people notice. Scorpio's extreme loyalty. When this sign chooses someone, when they decide you deserve their trust, they become the most loyal person you'll ever meet in life. Scorpio doesn't have friends out of convenience. They don't maintain relationships out of social obligation. If they're in your life, it's because they chose to be, and that choice means something profound. A Scorpio friend is the one who will defend you when you're not present, who will keep your secrets as if they were their own, who will help you bury the bodies, metaphorically speaking, without asking questions. This fierce loyalty is part of Scorpio's magnetic face, the one that inspires devotion in people who manage to cross their defenses. But here's the paradox. While Scorpio is intensely loyal, they're also intensely selective. They don't open the doors of their emotional fortress to just anyone. You need to prove you're worth it. You need to demonstrate that you can handle their intensity. You need to show that you won't use their vulnerability against them. And these tests aren't explicit. Scorpio is always testing, always observing, always evaluating. And you know what happens when you pass these tests? You gain access to one of the deepest, most interesting, most transformative human beings that exist. Because behind all that armor, there's a gigantic sensitivity, a capacity to love that borders on the supernatural, an emotional depth that few signs can reach. Scorpio's magnetic face also expresses itself in sexuality. And we're not just talking about physical attraction. We're talking about a sexual energy that permeates everything. Scorpio carries a natural erotic charge, a sensuality that doesn't need to be forced. It's as if every movement, every word, every look has a layer of seduction embedded in it. But again, it's not superficial seduction. Scorpio isn't interested in shallow conquests. They want fusion. They want transcendence. They want to touch and be touched in the deepest layers of human experience. That's why many describe the experience of being with a Scorpio as almost mystical, as if it transcends the limits of the physical and enters emotional and spiritual dimensions. This sexual intensity, when well channeled, makes Scorpio an unforgettable partner. But when misdirected, it can transform into obsession, possessiveness, sick jealousy. And there we begin to see the second face emerging, that shadow every Scorpio carries, and that can manifest in the most destructive ways possible. But before we go there, I need you to answer in the comments. Have you ever been attracted to Scorpio's magnetic energy? Have you felt that silent force that pulls you even when your reason says to keep your distance? Tell me, because these stories are always intense and I love reading each one of them. Scorpio's first face is, in essence, the face of personal power. It's the ability to be a force of nature without needing to shout that you're strong. It's the skill to transform environments, people, and situations just by your presence. It's the gift of seeing beyond and using that vision to heal or to destroy, depending on the conscious choice the Scorpio makes at every moment. And that choice is what defines everything. Because Scorpio has free will, like all of us. They can choose to use their magnetism to elevate, inspire, transform positively, or they can choose to use it to manipulate, control, destroy. The difference lies in the level of consciousness they've developed, in how much they know their own shadow, and decide not to be dominated by it. In the next chapters, we'll explore exactly that shadow. We'll dive into the second face, the one that scares, that disturbs, that reveals the darkest side of Scorpio nature. But for now, here's this reflection. Scorpio's magnetism isn't luck, isn't an accident. It's the result of an emotional and psychological depth that this sign has always carried, a connection with the hidden forces of existence that few can fully understand. Now we're going to enter the territory that most people prefer to avoid. We're going to talk about Scorpio's shadow face, the one that transforms the healer into destroyer, the protector into persecutor, the passionate lover into relentless enemy. And I need to make something clear right now. This face doesn't emerge because Scorpio is evil. It emerges because Scorpio was hurt too deeply, because someone crossed the barriers they spent years building, because they trusted someone with the most precious thing a Scorpio has to offer, their vulnerability, and then it was all thrown away as if it were worth nothing. Scorpio's shadow isn't explosive, it's calculated. While other signs explode in anger and then forget, Scorpio freezes, gets silent, even smiles. And it's exactly in that silence where the danger lies, because behind that silence, a storm is being meticulously organized. Let's start talking about the most famous and most feared aspect of Scorpio's shadow, revenge. But it's not revenge in the common sense of the word. It's not about hitting back in the same way. It's about cosmic justice, about energy rebalancing, about making the person feel exactly the weight of what they did. And here's what makes this so scary. Scorpio has a photographic memory for betrayals. They remember every detail, the exact date, what you were wearing, the tone of voice you used, the expression on your face. They file everything in a mental library that never erases, and they can go months, even years without giving any sign. You even forget what you did. But they don't forget. Never forget. When Scorpio finally acts, it seems like it came out of nowhere. But it didn't. Every move was planned with a surgeon's precision. They waited for the right moment, identified your most vulnerable point, and then attacked exactly where they knew it would hurt most. It's not gratuitous cruelty. It's pure strategy. And the most disturbing part, often you don't even realize you've been hit until it's too late. Because Scorpio doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to make a scene. They plant seeds, drop strategic information here and there, move pieces on the board so subtly that when you realize it, you've already lost the game without even knowing you were playing. But let's go beyond revenge. Let's talk about Scorpio's controlling side, which is perhaps even more problematic because it's harder to identify. A controlling Scorpio isn't like other signs that try to control you openly. They don't give direct orders. They manipulate the situation so skillfully that you think the decisions are yours, when in reality they planted every seed of that choice in your head. This control comes from fear. Fear of being betrayed again. Fear of losing what they conquered. Fear of being vulnerable. So they try to control all variables. They need to know where you are, who you're with, what you're doing. Not necessarily because they don't trust you, but because they don't trust the world around you. Don't trust that life won't rip you away from them, like it ripped other things away in the past. And here lies one of the biggest challenges for anyone in a relationship with an unbalanced Scorpio: extreme possessiveness. For Scorpio, there's no such thing as sharing when it comes to people they love. You're theirs or you're nobody's. That intensity that seemed so romantic at the beginning can quickly transform into a suffocating emotional prison. Scorpio's jealousy isn't that superficial jealousy that passes with a conversation. It's a visceral jealousy that corrodes from the inside, that creates scenarios in their head, that transforms small details into evidence of betrayal. And the worst part, often they don't even externalize it. They keep it, accumulate it, observe, and when it finally explodes, you can't even imagine that it was being built for months. But there's something even deeper in Scorpio's shadow that few talk about: self-destruction. Because all that intensity that Scorpio directs outward, they also direct inward. When they're unbalanced, they can be their own worst enemy. They can punish themselves in ways no other sign would be capable of. Scorpio, in self-destruction, can put themselves in dangerous situations, toxic relationships, addictions of all kinds. It's as if they're testing how far they can go before completely breaking. It's as if they want to prove to themselves that they can endure any pain, any darkness, any abyss. And you know why? Because deep down, Scorpio is afraid of their own vulnerability, afraid of appearing weak, afraid of needing someone. So they create impossible tests for themselves, extreme situations where they can prove their strength. But what they don't realize is that this constant need to prove something is precisely showing the wound they most want to hide. Let's talk now about something particularly dark, Scorpio's sadistic side. And I'm not necessarily talking about physical sadism, although that can exist too. I'm talking about the pleasure an unbalanced Scorpio can feel watching someone who hurt them suffer the consequences. It's a cold satisfaction, almost scientific. They observe your pain with curiosity, like a researcher observing an experiment. It's not that they're incapable of empathy. Quite the contrary. Scorpio feels too much. But when they activate their shadow, they temporarily turn off that empathy as a defense mechanism. Because if they allowed themselves to feel the other's pain, maybe they couldn't do what they need to do. And here's an uncomfortable truth. Scorpio knows exactly where to press to cause maximum emotional damage. They studied you while you were opening up, while you were vulnerable, while you were trusting them. They mapped every insecurity, every old wound, every sensitive point. And if you cross the line, they'll use that map against you with surgical precision. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Scorpio's shadow is this: the power to destroy reputations. Scorpio doesn't need to lie. They simply select which truth to tell, who to tell them to, and at what moment to tell them. They drop strategic information they know will completely change how people see you, and they do it so naturally, so casually, that nobody realizes they've been manipulated. This ability comes from Scorpio's natural skill of reading people and situations. They know exactly which information will cause the most impact on each person, know which buttons to press to make someone turn against you. And when they decide to use this power destructively, they can dismantle relationships, careers, reputations built over years. Now I need to pause here for an important reflection. This shadow face doesn't define Scorpio. It's a possibility, a potential that exists when the sign is deeply hurt and in total imbalance. Most Scorpios spend their entire lives consciously working not to let this shadow take control. But the shadow exists, and it needs to be recognized, not denied, because when you deny your own darkness, it becomes even more powerful. It operates behind the scenes of your psyche, influencing decisions without you realizing it. The evolved Scorpio isn't the one who eliminated their shadow. That's impossible. It's the one who knows it so well they can consciously choose when and how to express it. And here's something that will shock many people. Sometimes Scorpio's shadow needs to be activated, not for petty revenge, but for genuine protection. Because there are people in the world who only understand the language of force. There are situations where being kind means being stepped on. There are moments where you need to show your teeth or you'll be devoured. In those moments, having access to Scorpio's shadow is an evolutionary advantage. It's having the ability to be fierce when necessary, to establish non-negotiable boundaries, to say, this far, and not one step further, in a way that nobody dares to test. The problem arises when this shadow becomes the default operating mode. When Scorpio starts seeing threats where they don't exist. When they interpret every action as potential betrayal. When they live in a constant state of hypervigilance, waiting for the next attack, the next abandonment, the next disappointment. This state of chronic paranoia is exhausting not just for those who live with the Scorpio, but mainly for themselves. Because constantly living on the defensive, always ready to attack, always analyzing every word looking for double meaning, always looking for evidence of betrayal, this consumes gigantic vital energy. And the saddest part, the more Scorpio closes themselves in this shadow armor, the more they push away exactly what they most desire. Genuine connections, true love, real trust. They create a self-fulfilling prophecy where, by being so afraid of being betrayed, they end up creating situations that lead exactly to the betrayal they feared. Let me ask you in the comments, have you seen this shadow face of Scorpio in action? Have you been the target of a Scorpio's calculated revenge? Or maybe you're a Scorpio and recognize this shadow in yourself. Tell me, because this is a difficult but necessary part to understand about this complex sign. Scorpio's shadow face is real, it's powerful, and it's scary, but it's not the villain of the story. It's simply the response of an extremely sensitive being who was hurt beyond what they could bear. It's the defense mechanism of someone who feels everything amplified and needs to find ways to deal with this overwhelming intensity. In the next chapter, we'll explore something crucial: how Scorpio can integrate these two faces and use both light and shadow consciously and evolutionarily. Because Scorpio's true power isn't in denying their darkness, but in embracing it, understanding it, and channeling it constructively. Now we're going to talk about what is perhaps Scorpio's greatest secret, that power that few signs possess and that completely defines Scorpio essence, the ability to die and be reborn as many times as necessary within a single lifetime. When we talk about Scorpio, we're talking about the only zodiac sign that has death as an integral part of its nature. But it's not necessarily physical death. It's symbolic death, the death of ego, the death of old versions of oneself that no longer serve, the death of patterns, beliefs, identities that need to be left behind. And here's what separates Scorpio from all other signs. While most people fear death, whatever it may be, Scorpio embraces it. They intuitively understand that death is not an end, but a transformation. That for something new to be born, something old must die. That for the butterfly to emerge, the caterpillar must completely dissolve inside the cocoon. This regeneration process isn't beautiful. It's not romantic. It's not like in the movies where the character has a revelation and immediately transforms. Scorpio's rebirth process is brutal, painful, solitary, and terrifying. It's like being undone down to the atoms and then reconstructed cell by cell. When a Scorpio enters a phase of deep transformation, they disappear. Literally. They withdraw from the world, cut contacts, vanish from social media, cancel commitments. People start wondering where they are, what happened, if everything's okay. But they don't respond, because in that moment they're not available to the external world. They're in the cosmic womb, in the dark belly of transformation, dying to an old version of themselves. And during this period of withdrawal, intense things happen. Scorpio isn't just resting or recovering. They're literally, psychologically, unmaking themselves. They're confronting every shadow, every wound, every trauma they carry. They're looking at the most obscure aspects of their personality without looking away. They're performing spiritual surgery on themselves without anesthesia. This is what most people don't understand about Scorpio. They see the strength, the power, the intensity, but they don't see the price the Scorpio pays for that strength. They don't see the sleepless nights confronting internal demons. They don't see the tears shed in absolute solitude. They don't see the terror of not knowing if they'll be able to rebuild themselves this time. Because here's the truth. Every time Scorpio unmakes themselves, there's a real risk of not being able to recompose, of completely losing themselves in the darkness, of getting stuck between the death of the old version and the birth of the new version. It's like being suspended in the void, without floor, without ceiling, without references. And this requires a courage that few signs possess. But when Scorpio finally emerges from this process, and they always emerge, the transformation is impressive. It's not just a superficial change in behavior or appearance. It's a complete metamorphosis of essence. The person who returns is not the same one who entered. The eyes carry a different depth. The voice has a new authority. The presence vibrates at another frequency. This regenerative capacity gives Scorpio a supernatural resilience. Situations that would completely destroy other signs only make Scorpio stronger. Traumas that would leave permanent marks on others transform into wisdom for them. Losses that would cause total collapse in other people become fuel for the Scorpio's next phase of evolution. And here's something fascinating. The more time Scorpio goes through this process of death and rebirth, the more skilled they become at it. It's as if they develop an internal technology of transformation. They begin to recognize the signs that a new death is coming, learn to enter the process with less resistance, discover how to accelerate certain phases and deepen others. But let's be honest, this gift can also be a burden. Because while other signs manage to maintain a certain stability of identity throughout life, Scorpio is constantly reinventing themselves, and this creates unique challenges. How to maintain relationships when you're always changing. How to build a career when your passions transform radically with each cycle. How to explain to people that you're simply no longer the same person they met a few years ago. This evolutionary instability also affects how others perceive the Scorpio. People often have difficulty keeping up with their transformations. They want you to continue being who you were. They get uncomfortable when you change drastically. They may even distance themselves because they no longer recognize who you've become. And for Scorpio, this can be extremely lonely. But here's the hidden power in all this. Each cycle of death and rebirth expands Scorpio's consciousness in ways that other signs take multiple incarnations to achieve. They live multiple lives within a single existence, experience different versions of themselves, explore layers of consciousness that most people don't even know exist. This regenerative capacity also manifests in the physical body. It's no coincidence that Scorpio is associated with healing, medicine, surgery. This sign has an intimate relationship with the processes of death and cellular renewal. Many Scorpios have an impressive ability to recover from illnesses, injuries, physical traumas that would be devastating for others. It's as if the Scorpio body has access to deeper regeneration codes, as if each cell carries the phoenix's memory and instinctively knows how to build itself from the ashes. This doesn't mean Scorpio is physically invincible. Far from it. But it means that when they decide to heal, when they consciously activate this regenerative gift, impressive things can happen. Let's talk now about Scorpio's 3 symbolic stages, because understanding this is completely understanding this sign's regenerative process. The first stage is the terrestrial scorpion, the one that crawls on the ground, that has venom ready to attack, that lives by basic survival instincts. It's Scorpio in its most primitive form, most reactive, most connected to matter and the physical plane. In this stage, the Scorpio is still learning to deal with their own intensity. They react to threats with aggression, hold grudges, use their venom indiscriminately, live in a constant state of alert, ready to sting anything that gets too close. It's the phase where the shadow is most active, less conscious, more destructive. But then comes the first great transformation. The scorpion dies and is reborn as an eagle. Now they're no longer crawling on the ground. They're flying at heights. Their perspective has completely changed. From above they can see patterns that were invisible from the ground, can see the connection between things, can anticipate movements and trends. The eagle represents the Scorpio, who has developed strategic vision and spiritual elevation. They still have the power to attack. The eagle's talons are as lethal as the scorpion's venom. But now there's wisdom guiding that power. There's discernment. There's the ability to consciously choose when and how to use their strength. In this stage, the Scorpio becomes a masterful observer. They no longer get involved in small dramas. Don't waste energy on petty revenge. They choose their battles carefully, and when they choose to fight, they fight with the precision and power of an aerial predator who knows exactly when to dive to capture their prey. But there's a third stage, the highest, the rarest, the most powerful, the phoenix. And this is where Scorpio becomes practically indestructible, because the phoenix doesn't just survive death, it feeds on it. The fire that burns other people is the same fire that regenerates the phoenix. The destruction that would devastate other signs is exactly the fuel that Phoenix Scorpio uses to be reborn even more magnificent. The Scorpio who reaches the Phoenix level has already gone through so many cycles of death and rebirth that they no longer fear anything. They've already lost everything and rebuilt themselves multiple times, already visited the darkest places of the human psyche, and came back, already faced their most terrifying demons and integrated them. At this point, they become an emotional alchemist, capable of transforming any poison into medicine. And here's the most important part. The Phoenix doesn't use their power to destroy. They use it to transmute, to elevate, to heal. The Scorpio at this stage becomes a true shaman, a world crosser, someone who can descend into the underworld and return with medicine for others. They become the therapist, the healer, the spiritual guide who isn't afraid to enter another's darkness because they've already completely navigated their own. But make no mistake, reaching the Phoenix level isn't automatic. It's not guaranteed. Many Scorpios spend their entire lives at the terrestrial scorpion level, using their venom destructively. Some manage to reach the eagle level and stabilize there. Very few actually become the Phoenix. And those who do, they become forces of nature, catalysts of transformation, not just for themselves, but for everyone around them. Now tell me in the comments, have you seen a Scorpio go through this process of death and rebirth? Have you witnessed someone literally transform into a completely different person after a deep crisis? Or maybe you're a Scorpio yourself who has already gone through multiple cycles like these. Share it there, because these stories are always deep and inspiring. The gift of regeneration is what makes Scorpio unique in the zodiac. Other signs can be strong, intelligent, charismatic, but only Scorpio has this ability to completely unmake themselves and rebuild in totally new ways. It's like having access to a cosmic reset code that allows starting over whenever necessary. And maybe that's why Scorpio carries so much wisdom in their eyes, because each rebirth cycle adds layers of understanding that go far beyond intellectual knowledge. It's a visceral, cellular wisdom that comes from having died and been reborn so many times that death itself has lost its terror. Now we're going to enter one of the most intense topics when we talk about Scorpio, love. And I need to warn you right now, if you're expecting a smooth and predictable romantic story, you're in the wrong place. Because when Scorpio loves, there's nothing smooth about it. There's fire, there's abyss, there's an intensity that can both elevate you to the heavens and drag you to the depths. Let's start with the obvious that everyone's already heard. Scorpio is the most sexual sign of the zodiac. But this statement, although true, is extremely superficial, because reducing Scorpio to sexuality is like looking at the ocean and seeing only the waves on the surface, completely ignoring the deep currents, the abysses, the underwater worlds that exist down there. Scorpio's sexuality isn't just physical, it's emotional, it's spiritual, it's psychological. When a Scorpio connects sexually with someone, it's not just two bodies meeting, it's two souls merging. It's an experience of ego death and joint rebirth. It's transcendence. It's as if each touch carries layers of meaning that go far beyond physical pleasure. And here's something few understand. For Scorpio, sex without deep emotional connection is empty. Sure, a Scorpio can have casual encounters, can experiment, can explore, but that will never truly satisfy the Scorpio need for total fusion. They don't just want your body. They want your soul, your secrets, your shadows, your most hidden parts. This need for depth makes Scorpio extremely selective in matters of love. They don't fall in love easily. They can be attracted, can feel desire, can even get temporarily involved. But true love, the kind that touches the Scorpio's core, that's rare. That's reserved for very few people who manage to cross all the layers of protection they've built over the years. When Scorpio finally decides to surrender when they truly fall in love, it's like a dormant volcano erupting. All that intensity they kept controlled, all that passion they kept in the depths, everything comes to the surface at once. And this can be overwhelming both for them and for the person receiving all this energy. The Scorpio in love is a force of nature. They don't love halfway, don't show affection with moderation, don't measure words or gestures. When they love, it's with every cell of their body, every thought of their mind, every feeling of their heart. Is it obsessive? Yes. Is it too intense? Definitely. Is it scary for those who aren't prepared? Absolutely. But here's the magical part. For the right person, for someone who also seeks depth, who also wants fusion, who also desires this type of transcendent connection, being with a Scorpio in love is experiencing a love that most people only know from movies or books. It's feeling what it means to be completely seen, completely desired, completely loved in all your dimensions. Scorpio in love is protective to the extreme. They become a fierce guardian of the loved one, not in the childish sense of possessive control, although that can happen when they're unbalanced, but in the sense of creating a force field around that person. Nobody hurts who Scorpio loves without facing severe consequences. They'll go to the ends of the earth to protect, defend, and avenge if necessary. This protection comes from a deep place of loyalty. When Scorpio chooses you, when they decide you're their person, it's not a temporary or superficial decision. It's a soul commitment. It's as if they're saying, I saw your shadows, knew your demons, explored your deepest abysses, and I still choose you. And now that I've chosen, nothing and no one will separate us. But this same fierce loyalty has a dark side, extreme possessiveness. And here we need to be honest about one of the biggest challenges of being in a relationship with a Scorpio. They have tremendous difficulty with the concept of sharing. I'm not necessarily talking about open relationships or polyamory, although some evolved Scorpios can explore this. I'm talking about the difficulty of accepting that the loved one has a life beyond them. Scorpio jealousy is legendary for a reason. It's not that silly jealousy that passes with a reassuring conversation. It's a visceral jealousy that corrodes, that creates elaborate scenarios in the mind, that transforms small details into monumental evidence of betrayal. A 10-minute delay can turn into a complete investigation. A like on a photo can trigger interrogations worthy of a professional detective. And the most complicated part, Scorpio has such sharp intuition that they're often right in their suspicions. They feel when something's wrong, notice subtle energy changes, detect lies before you even finish telling them. So when they question something, it's not always paranoia. Sometimes they're genuinely picking up signals you don't even realize you're emitting. But let's also talk about the healing side of Scorpio love. Because when Scorpio loves in an evolved way, they become an agent of deep transformation in the partner's life. They have the unique ability to see your deepest wounds and help you heal them, not with empty words of encouragement, but descending together with you into your shadows, holding your hand while you face your demons. A relationship with Scorpio can be therapeutic in the deepest sense of the word. They'll force you to look at things you've spent your whole life avoiding. They'll question your defenses, your escape mechanisms, your comfortable lies. And yes, it hurts, but it's a pain that heals, a pain that transforms, a pain that eventually frees you from patterns that have been holding you back for years. Scorpio in love is also incredibly generous. When they really care about you, there's nothing they wouldn't do. They'll give you the last penny in their pocket, drive hours to pick you up in the middle of the night, drop everything to be by your side in a crisis. This generosity doesn't come from a place of sacrifice or martyrdom. It comes from a deep recognition that you're connected, that your pain is their pain, that your well-being is essential to their well-being. But here's the paradox. While Scorpio is extremely generous, they also keep parts of themselves completely inaccessible. There are chambers in the Scorpio heart that not even the deepest love can penetrate. There are secrets they'll never share, vulnerabilities they'll never expose, fears they'll carry alone to the grave. This contradiction can be frustrating for the partner. You feel like you know Scorpio deeply, that you have access to layers of them that no one else has. And that's true. But at the same time, you feel there's always something more, something that escapes, something that remains eternally mysterious. And that feeling will never completely disappear, because it's part of Scorpio's essential nature to keep some doors locked, even for the closest people. Let's talk now about something crucial, how Scorpio deals with breakups. And the short answer is very, very badly. Because for a sign that loves with such intensity, that invests so much emotionally, that merges so completely with the other, the end of a relationship isn't just a separation. It's an amputation. It's ripping out a part of their own soul. When Scorpio is left, especially if they were betrayed or humiliated in the process, the wound is so deep it can take years to heal. And during this healing process, they can visit very dark places of the psyche, can become vindictive, destructive, self-destructive, can use all the intimate information they collected during the relationship as weapons, can dedicate a frightening amount of energy to making the person regret leaving them. But here's something interesting. When it's Scorpio who decides to end it, they can be surprisingly cold and definitive. There's no back and forth. There's no, let's try one more time. When they close the door, it stays locked, sealed, often forever. They may have loved you with all the intensity of the universe, but once they've decided it's over, it's as if you cease to exist for them. This capacity for radical cutting comes from Scorpio's ability of death and rebirth. They simply kill that version of themselves that was in the relationship, bury that identity, and are reborn as someone new. It's brutal, it's painful for everyone involved, but it's how they survive emotionally. And let me tell you something few talk about. Scorpio never forgets a true love. It could have been 10, 20, 30 years. They could be in another relationship, could have built a completely different life. But if you were a real love, if you touched that deep place in them, you're stored in a special chamber of their memory. Not necessarily as nostalgia or desire to return, but as a permanent mark on the soul. Now let's talk about compatibility. Scorpio needs someone who can handle intensity. Water signs like Cancer and Pisces can understand Scorpio's emotional depth, although they can be easily hurt by their aggressiveness. Earth signs like Taurus and Capricorn can provide the stability Scorpio needs, although they may find their emotional intensity excessive. Fire signs like Aries and Leo can create extremely passionate relationships with Scorpio, but also extremely explosive ones. It's intensity multiplied by intensity, which can be glorious or destructive depending on the maturity level of those involved. Air signs like Gemini and Aquarius usually have more difficulty, as they tend to be more mental and less emotional, which can deeply frustrate Scorpio's need for total emotional fusion. But the truth is that sign compatibility is just one piece of the puzzle. What really matters is whether or not the person can handle Scorpio's transformative nature. Can they embrace the intensity without getting scared? Can they be deep without drowning? Can they maintain their individuality while merging with the other? Can they face their own shadows that will inevitably emerge in this relational alchemy? If the answer is yes, loving a Scorpio can be the most transformative experience of your life. You'll discover depths in yourself you didn't even know existed. You'll experience a level of intimacy that transcends the ordinary. You'll learn what it means to be loved not despite your imperfections, but including them, embracing them, transmuting them. If the answer is no, the best advice is keep your distance. Because entering Scorpio's orbit without being prepared is like flying too close to the sun. You can get burned in ways that will leave permanent scars. And Scorpio will also come out wounded from the process because they will have invested everything in something that wasn't meant to work. Let me ask you in the comments, have you ever loved or been loved by a Scorpio? How was that experience? Was it the most intense love of your life? Or was it a hurricane that left wreckage? Or maybe it was both at the same time. Share it there, because these stories are always the most intense and revealing. Scorpio love isn't for the faint of heart. It's not for those who want comfort and predictability. It's not for those who fear depth, but for those who have the courage to dive, who don't run from intensity, who are willing to be transformed by love. There's nothing more powerful, more transcendent, more absolutely overwhelming than being loved by a Scorpio who has decided you deserve the entire ocean of passion that exists within them. Now we're going to enter a territory that many consider controversial, but that anyone who lives intimately with a Scorpio knows is absolutely real. Scorpio's hidden powers. And I'm not talking about superstition or fantasy. I'm talking about perceptive abilities so sharp they border on the supernatural. Let's start with the most obvious, Scorpio intuition. But this isn't that common intuition everyone has from time to time. That vague feeling that may or may not be right. Scorpio's intuition is surgical, specific, frighteningly accurate. It's as if they have access to a frequency of information that other signs simply can't tune into. Scorpio knows when you're lying before you even finish the sentence, not because they rationally analyzed your words or body language, although they do that too, but because they simply feel the energetic dissonance between what you're saying and what is true. It's a visceral, almost physical perception that something doesn't fit. And here's what makes this so disturbing for those who live with Scorpios. You can't deceive them. You can try, can rehearse the perfect story, can believe your own lie. But when you look into a Scorpio's eyes, you have the uncomfortable feeling that they're reading an open book, that every thought of yours is visible, that there's no secret that resists that penetrating gaze. This ability isn't magic in the mystical sense. It's the result of a combination of factors. First, Scorpio is a compulsive observer. They notice everything. That microfacial movement that lasted a fraction of a second, that imperceptible change in tone of voice, that almost invisible hesitation before responding. They capture everything and process it instantly. Second, Scorpio has a formidable memory for behavioral patterns. They know how you normally act, speak, react. So when there's any deviation, however small, they detect it immediately. It's as if they've created a complete psychological profile of you and are constantly comparing your current behavior with this profile. Third, and perhaps most importantly, Scorpio has extreme energetic sensitivity. They feel the emotional vibrations around them like palpable waves. When you're anxious, even trying to hide it, they feel it. When you're angry disguised as calm, they notice. When you're in love but trying to seem indifferent, they already know. This energetic sensitivity also makes Scorpio highly empathic, although it's a different empathy from Pisces or Cancer. It's not that sweet, welcoming empathy. It's a penetrating, almost invasive empathy. Scorpio doesn't just feel what you're feeling. They dive deeply into that emotion, explore its roots, understand where it comes from. And here's something fascinating. Many Scorpios report experiences that science would classify as paranormal. Premonitory dreams that come true with frightening details. Strong premonitions about future events that are confirmed. Physical sensations when something is happening to loved ones, even at a distance. Ability to sense dangers before they manifest. Now, you may be skeptical about this. You may think they're just coincidences or confirmation bias. But when you talk to multiple Scorpios, and they all report similar experiences, when you yourself witness these abilities in action repeatedly, it becomes difficult to continue dismissing it as mere chance. Scorpio's connection with the occult isn't accidental. This sign rules the 8th astrological house, which is associated with death, rebirth, transformation, but also with everything that's hidden, with the mysteries of existence, with the invisible forces that move reality. Scorpio naturally gravitates toward these themes because they resonate with their deepest essence. That's why so many Scorpios are interested in occultism, esotericism, magic, tarot, astrology, mediumship. It's not just superficial curiosity. It's a recognition that there's much more to reality than what can be seen or measured. It's a magnetic attraction to what's beyond the veil, to what most people prefer to ignore or deny. And many Scorpios develop abilities in these areas. They become exceptionally accurate tarot readers, practice different forms of magic with impressive results, develop mediumistic capacities, become powerful energy healers, not because they learn techniques from books, but because they access something intuitively, something that was already latent within them waiting to be activated. Let's talk specifically about Scorpio's healing capacity, because this sign has a natural gift for working with energy in transformative ways. When a Scorpio places their hands on someone with intention to heal, things happen. People report sensations of intense heat, deep emotional release, relief from physical pains that doctors couldn't solve. This happens because Scorpio isn't afraid to enter the shadows. While other healers work only with light and love and positivity, Scorpio goes straight to the wound. They have no problem touching the pain, bringing to the surface what was suppressed, facilitating purge and release processes that can be temporarily uncomfortable but deeply healing. This approach makes Scorpio a natural therapist, even if they've never formally studied psychology. People open up to Scorpios in ways they don't open up to anyone else. Tell secrets they swore never to reveal. Cry tears that have been repressed for decades. Because they feel, even if unconsciously, that Scorpio can hold that weight, that they won't judge them, that they understand darkness because they intimately know their own. But this healing gift comes with a price. Scorpio tends to absorb others' energy like a sponge. After intense interactions, especially with people in deep suffering, they can feel completely drained, as if they had carried a weight that wasn't theirs. That's why it's crucial for Scorpios to learn energetic protection techniques and regular cleansing. Now let's talk about something darker. Scorpio's ability to energetically influence other people. And yes, this may sound like manipulation, and in a way it is, but I'm not just talking about conscious psychological manipulation. I'm talking about an influence that operates on subtler levels. A focused Scorpio can project energy in ways that affect the emotional state of others around them, can create an atmosphere of tension just with their silent presence, can calm a chaotic situation just by directing intention, can make someone feel uncomfortable without saying a single word. It's as if they emanate frequencies that others capture unconsciously. This isn't mind control in the sense of making someone act against their will, but it's definitely a form of energetic influence that can be used for both constructive and destructive purposes. A Scorpio conscious of this power learns to use it responsibly. An unconscious or malicious Scorpio can use it to manipulate, dominate, and control. There's also the question of the evil eye associated with Scorpio. In many cultures, it's believed that certain people have the power to negatively affect others just with their gaze, especially when they feel envy or anger. And curiously, Scorpio is often associated with this. Not that all Scorpios have this ability or use it, but there's something in the intensity of the Scorpio gaze that can be genuinely impactful. People report feeling strange after receiving an intense look from an angry Scorpio. They feel drained, anxious, as if something had been disturbed in their energy field. Again, this can be dismissed as psychological, and certainly there's a psychological component. But so many people report similar experiences that it's worth considering that perhaps there's something more happening. Let's also talk about Scorpio's relationship with death, not just symbolic, but literal. Many Scorpios report near-death experiences, whether by accident, serious illness, or other circumstances. And curiously, these experiences often catalyze deep transformations and activate perceptive abilities that didn't exist before. It's as if crossing the veil between life and death, even if temporarily, gives access to dimensions of consciousness normally inaccessible. Scorpios who have gone through these experiences often develop stronger mediumistic abilities, greater intuition, and a visceral understanding that death isn't the end, but a transition. This lack of fear of death, or at least a less terrified relationship with it, gives Scorpio a significant psychological advantage. While most people live with unconscious fear of death that influences all their choices, Scorpio has already made peace with their mortality. This frees them to live more intensely, to risk more, to go deeper. Another hidden ability of Scorpio is what we could call emotional X-ray vision. They don't just perceive the superficial emotions you're displaying. They see the layers underneath, see the anger behind the sadness, see the fear behind the arrogance, see the neediness behind the performative independence. It's as if they have direct access to your unconscious. This ability makes Scorpio an exceptional reader of hidden motivations. They understand what's really driving people's behavior, even when they themselves don't know, can predict how someone will react in certain situations because they understand the deep patterns that govern that psyche. And this brings us to a crucial point. Scorpio needs to be very careful about how they use these gifts, because with great power comes great responsibility. As the cliché says, the ability to see through people, to influence them energetically, to touch their deepest wounds. All of this can be used to heal or to hurt. The evolved Scorpio recognizes these powers and consciously chooses to use them to elevate, transform, heal. They become a modern shaman, a transformation facilitator, a guardian of mysteries who uses their occult knowledge to serve collective evolution. They understand that they received these abilities not for personal domination, but to assist others in their processes of death and rebirth. The unevolved Scorpio, on the other hand, can use these same powers in destructive ways, can emotionally manipulate, can expose others' vulnerabilities for personal gain, can use their deep knowledge of the human psyche as a weapon, can drain energy from others like a psychic vampire, consciously or unconsciously. Let me ask you in the comments, have you ever felt Scorpio's psychic energy? Have you had the feeling that a Scorpio was reading your thoughts? Have you experienced that almost telepathic connection that sometimes happens with people of this sign? Or are you a Scorpio and recognize these abilities in yourself? Share it there because these reports are always fascinating. The truth is that Scorpio naturally inhabits the space between worlds, between conscious and unconscious, between life and death, between material and spiritual, between light and shadow. This liminal position gives access to perceptions and abilities that other signs simply don't have. But it also requires a delicate balance, a deep responsibility, a constant awareness of how to use these gifts. In the next chapter, we'll explore Scorpio's complete evolutionary journey, from the most primitive stage to total mastery, because understanding these hidden powers is just part of the story. The most important question is, how does Scorpio integrate all these abilities into a mature and conscious expression of their maximum potential? Now we're going to explore perhaps the deepest and most transformative aspect of Scorpio, the complete evolutionary journey this sign travels throughout life. Because unlike other signs that have a relatively stable expression, Scorpio is a sign of constant metamorphosis, of continuous death and rebirth, of radical transformation that can happen multiple times in a single existence. Scorpio's journey isn't linear. It's not like climbing a staircase where each step inevitably takes you up. It's more like a spiral, where you can visit the same themes and challenges at different levels of depth, where you can even temporarily regress before taking gigantic evolutionary leaps. It's an unpredictable journey, often brutal, but potentially the most transformative of the entire zodiac. Let's start with the first stage, Scorpio at the most primitive level, the one who hasn't yet developed consciousness about their own shadow. This is the Scorpio who lives dominated by the most basic instincts, survival, defense, attack when feeling threatened. It's the literal scorpion crawling on the ground, with the stinger always ready, seeing threats everywhere. At this stage, the Scorpio is deeply reactive. Someone hurts them. They retaliate with venom. Someone betrays them. They plan elaborate revenge. Someone challenges them. They counterattack with full force. There's not much room for forgiveness, for understanding, for seeing the situation from multiple perspectives. It's all very black and white. You're with me or against me, friend or enemy, deserve my loyalty or my destruction. The Scorpio at this level also tends to be extremely possessive and controlling. They haven't yet learned to deal with vulnerability in a healthy way, so they try to control everything and everyone around them as a way to feel safe. Relationships become battlefield for power. Friendships are constantly tested to prove loyalty. Professional situations turn into domination games. There's also a strong tendency toward self-destructiveness. At this stage, the primitive Scorpio can get involved in risky behaviors, addictions, toxic relationships, situations that will clearly hurt them. It's as if they're testing their own limits, seeing how far they can go into darkness before completely losing themselves. Or maybe it's a form of unconscious self-punishment, a feeling that they deserve to suffer. But here's what's important to understand. This stage isn't bad in the moral sense. It's simply where the journey begins for many Scorpios. It's the starting point, not the destination. And all of us, regardless of sign, have primitive and shadowy aspects that need to be recognized and integrated. The difference is that Scorpio will have to confront these shadows more intensely and directly than most. What catalyzes the transition from the first to the second stage is usually a deep crisis. It could be a devastating betrayal that forces the Scorpio to look at their own patterns of choice. It could be a significant loss that completely breaks their identity structure. It could be a physical, emotional, or spiritual collapse that forces them to stop and reevaluate everything. These crises are agonizing while they're happening. The Scorpio feels like they're literally dying, and in a way they are. An old version of them needs to die so a new one can be born. It's the first great cycle of conscious death and rebirth, and perhaps the most painful, because they don't yet know they'll be able to be reborn on the other side. When they emerge from this first great transformation, the Scorpio begins to enter the second stage, the eagle. Now they're no longer crawling on the ground. They've managed to elevate their perspective. They begin to see patterns that were invisible before. They understand that not everything is personal, that often people hurt because they're hurt, that revenge is an endless cycle that only perpetuates suffering. The eagle still has sharp talons and can be deadly when necessary. But now there's wisdom guiding the use of this power. There's discernment. The eagle chooses their battles carefully, doesn't waste energy on small dramas, doesn't get dragged into conflicts that aren't worth it, observes from above, sees the complete panorama, acts strategically only when it really matters. At this stage, the Scorpio develops a deeper understanding of human motivations. They begin to see that the person who betrayed them was acting from their own unhealed wounds, that the behavior that hurt them wasn't about them, but about the other person's internal demons. This understanding doesn't mean accepting abuse or allowing people to step on them. It simply means seeing clearly before deciding how to respond. The eagle also develops the ability to fly above emotional storms. While the primitive Scorpio drowned in each wave of intense emotion, the eagle learned to observe these emotions from a safe distance, feels deeply, but isn't dominated by what they feel, can experience anger without being consumed by it, can feel sadness without getting lost in it, can love intensely without pathologically merging with the other. Another important development at this stage is the beginning of trauma healing, because all Scorpios carry traumas, deep wounds that shape their relationship with trust, vulnerability, intimacy. At the primitive level, these wounds command everything unconsciously. At the eagle level, the Scorpio begins to bring these wounds to consciousness, to actively work on healing them. This healing process isn't quick or easy. Scorpio doesn't do superficial therapy. When they decide to heal, they go to the bone, review painful memories they had buried for decades, confront transgenerational family patterns, dive into the darkest parts of their own psyche without looking away. It's Herculean work, but absolutely necessary for evolution. The eagle also begins to channel Scorpio intensity in more constructive ways. Instead of using the power of perception to manipulate, they use it to heal. Instead of exploiting others' vulnerabilities for personal gain, they offer safe space for others to open up. Instead of using secrets as weapons, they become a trustworthy guardian of confidences. The energy is the same, but the direction has completely changed. At this stage, many Scorpios discover their vocational purpose. They become exceptional therapists because they intimately know the journey through shadow. They become investigators, researchers, surgeons, professionals who deal with life, death, and transformation. Or they find ways to bring depth and authenticity to whatever area they choose, refusing to live superficially. But the journey doesn't end at the eagle. There's a third stage, the highest and rarest, the phoenix. And here is where Scorpio achieves something close to spiritual mastery. The phoenix has already gone through so many cycles of death and rebirth that they've completely transcended fear, already lost everything multiple times and rebuilt themselves, already visited the deepest underworlds, and returned not just surviving, but transformed into alchemical gold. The phoenix doesn't just survive fire, they feed on it. What would destroy other signs is exactly the fuel the phoenix uses to be reborn, more magnificent. Crises that would break ordinary people are seen as opportunities for transformation. Devastating losses are recognized as portals to new beginnings. Death itself, physical or symbolic, completely loses its terror. The Scorpio at the phoenix level has developed something rare, the ability to transmute any energy, any experience, any emotion into wisdom and medicine. Poison becomes antidote. Darkness becomes light without denying or repressing them, but through deep internal alchemy. Wounds become healing portals not just for themselves, but for everyone they touch. At this stage, the Scorpio becomes a true shaman, a world crosser. They can consciously descend into the underworlds of the psyche, their own and others, and return with medicine, no longer afraid to enter darkness because they know, with absolute certainty, they can always be reborn. This certainty isn't blind faith, it's visceral knowledge conquered through repeated experience. The phoenix has also completely transcended the need for revenge, not because they became passive or weak, but because they understand that each person is living their own internal battles, that all destructive behavior comes from unhealed wounds. This doesn't mean tolerating abuse. The phoenix has clear and non-negotiable boundaries, but it means responding with wisdom instead of reaction, with informed compassion instead of blind hatred. Another aspect of the phoenix is the complete integration of light and shadow. While at the scorpion stage there was denial of shadow through projection onto others, and at the eagle stage there was recognition and work with shadow. At the phoenix stage, there's total acceptance and integration. Shadow is no longer an enemy to be fought, but an integral part of being that has its place and purpose. This integration allows the phoenix to access immense powers without the risk of corruption, can use influence without manipulation, can exercise power without domination, can be fierce without cruelty, can dance on the razor's edge between opposites without falling to either extreme, maintaining the dynamic balance that characterizes true mastery. The phoenix also develops a presence that is simultaneously powerful and welcoming. While the primitive scorpion scares and the eagle intimidates, the phoenix inspires. People feel safe in the phoenix's presence, even knowing the immense power they carry, because this power is completely in service of the greater good, not personal ego. But here's the reality. Very few Scorpios completely reach the phoenix level. Most oscillate between scorpion and eagle throughout life, may have moments of phoenix transcendence, but then temporarily regress under stress or trauma. And that's okay. The journey isn't about perfection. It's about conscious progression, about choosing evolution time after time, even when it would be easier to stay in the familiar place. There's also a fourth symbol associated with Scorpio that few know, the golden phoenix or the swan. This is the stage beyond the phoenix, where the Scorpio not only mastered personal transformation, but dedicates themselves completely to the service of collective transformation. It's the spiritual master, the visionary leader, the healer of healers who works at scales that impact not just individuals, but entire communities. At this level, the Scorpio becomes a catalyst for collective evolution. Their mere presence elevates the consciousness of the environments they inhabit. Their words carry weight that goes beyond literal meaning. Their actions create ripples that spread far beyond immediate impact. It's the most refined and powerful expression of Scorpio energy, placed completely in service of light without denying or repressing shadow. But let's be realistic. Most Scorpios will never reach this level, and they don't need to. Each person's journey is unique. What's important isn't arriving at some exalted state of spiritual perfection. What's important is being committed to one's own evolution, to conscious work in the shadows, to the repeated choice to transform poison into medicine. And here's something crucial. Scorpio's evolutionary journey isn't better than other signs. It's just different. Each sign has its own unique path of evolution, its own challenges, its own gifts. Scorpio happens to have a particularly intense and dramatic journey marked by multiple deaths and rebirths, but intensity isn't synonymous with superiority. What makes Scorpio's journey special is the depth. While other signs may evolve by expanding horizontally, learning more, experiencing more, connecting with more people, Scorpio evolves by digging vertically, going deeper and deeper into the same central themes of power, death, sexuality, transformation, until reaching the absolute core of existence. This vertical depth creates a wisdom that is qualitatively different from horizontal knowledge. It's a visceral, cellular wisdom that can't be learned in books or taught in workshops. It can only be conquered through direct experience of dying and being reborn repeatedly, of descending into personal underworlds and returning transformed. Let me ask you in the comments, if you're a Scorpio, at what stage of this journey do you recognize yourself? Are you still at the primitive Scorpion level, struggling with reactivity and revenge? Are you at the eagle level, developing wisdom and perspective? Or have you reached Phoenix moments of complete transcendence? And if you're not a Scorpio but know Scorpios, can you identify what stage they're at? Scorpio's evolutionary journey is, in essence, the journey of human consciousness in its most concentrated expression. It's about integrating light and shadow. It's about transforming trauma into wisdom. It's about dying to limited versions of oneself and being reborn in more authentic and powerful expressions. It's about learning to use immense power with responsibility and compassion. And maybe that's why Scorpio is one of the most misunderstood and feared signs of the zodiac. Because this journey scares. Most people prefer to remain on the surface, avoid confronting their shadows, maintain a stable and predictable identity. The idea of having to die and be reborn multiple times seems terrifying, and it is. But on the other side of that, terror exists a freedom, a power, a depth of being that's worth every moment of agony. And here we reach the end of this deep journey through Scorpio's two faces. But before we close, I need to ask you a crucial question. After everything you discovered today, do you still think you know Scorpio? Or did you realize that behind that penetrating gaze exists an entire universe of complexity that most people will never be able to fully access? Because that's the truth about Scorpio. You can spend your entire life studying this sign, living with Scorpios, being a Scorpio yourself, and still discover new layers, unexplored depths, fascinating contradictions that defy any attempt at simplistic categorization. Scorpio isn't the villain many paint them as. They're also not the mystical and transcendent hero some idealize. Scorpio is human in their rawest and most authentic expression. It's the ability to be deeply good and deeply shadowy, often on the same day, sometimes in the same moment. It's the constant dance between destruction and creation, between poison and healing, between death and rebirth. Throughout this video, we explored Scorpio's magnetic face, that silent intensity that attracts effortlessly, that power of transformation that can completely change lives. We saw how Scorpio is the natural healer, the one who isn't afraid to dive into others' shadows because they've already completely navigated their own, the one who offers a love so deep and total it can both save and consume. But we also honestly explored the shadow face, the calculated revenge, the possessive control, the corrosive jealousy, the ability to destroy with the same intensity they heal. We hid nothing, because pretending this shadow doesn't exist is denying Scorpio's very essence, and denying shadow only makes it more dangerous, more unconscious, more destructive. The liberating truth is this: the two faces aren't separate. There isn't a good Scorpio and a bad Scorpio. There's only Scorpio at different levels of consciousness and integration. The same power that can be used to manipulate can be channeled to heal. The same intensity that can suffocate can also be the fuel for the most transformative love you've ever experienced. We also saw Scorpio's unique gift for regeneration, how this sign can be completely destroyed, reduced to ashes, and still rebuild themselves into something stronger, wiser, more refined. How many signs have this ability? How many people can genuinely die to old versions of themselves and be reborn transformed? Scorpio does this naturally, repeatedly, as if programmed for metamorphosis. We explored Scorpio's complexity in love, that mind territory where intensity can create both heaven and hell, where you can experience the deepest fusion two human beings are capable of achieving, or find yourself trapped in a web of possessiveness and control. The difference lies in the Scorpio's level of evolution, in their ability to love without devouring, to merge without losing themselves. We dove into Scorpio's hidden powers, that almost psychic intuition that reads between the lines, that perceives hidden truths, that feels invisible energies. We recognize that there's something in Scorpio that goes beyond what's rationally explainable, a connection with hidden dimensions of reality that few signs access so naturally. And finally, we mapped the complete evolutionary journey, from the primitive scorpion crawling on the ground with stinger ready, through the eagle that flies high and sees with wisdom, to the phoenix that has completely transcended the fear of death because they've been reborn so many times. They know with absolute certainty it's always possible to start over. Now let me tell you something that might be the most important insight of all. If you love a Scorpio, if you live with a Scorpio, or if you yourself are a Scorpio, understand that this duality isn't a problem to be solved. It's the very nature of the sign. It's what makes Scorpio so fascinating, so powerful, so transformative. Trying to make a Scorpio be only light is like trying to make the ocean have only surface without depths. It's denying their essence. It's asking them to be something they're not. Scorpio's true power lies exactly in the ability to integrate opposites, to dance between light and shadow, to use both faces consciously and responsibly. If you're in a relationship with Scorpio, don't expect them to be smooth or predictable. Don't try to domesticate their intensity. Don't ask them to love with moderation. Either you embrace the complete hurricane, with all its devastating beauty and transformative power, or you keep safe distance. There's no middle ground with authentic Scorpio. If you're friends with a Scorpio, know that you were chosen. Scorpio doesn't have friends by chance or convenience. If they let you in, if they opened their fortified doors, if they showed vulnerability, that means something profound. This friendship can last a lifetime and survive any storm, as long as you never betray the trust they placed in you. And if you're a Scorpio watching this, I hope you recognized yourself in both the brilliant and shadowy parts. I hope you understand that your intensity isn't a flaw, that your depth isn't exaggeration, that your need for constant transformation isn't instability, it's simply who you are. And the world needs this energy, this ability to go deep, to not be afraid of uncomfortable truths, to transform poison into medicine. But I also hope that you, Scorpio, take responsibility for the immense power you carry, that you consciously work with your shadow instead of projecting it onto others, that you choose healing instead of destruction whenever possible, that you use your ability to read people to elevate, not to manipulate, that you channel your intensity toward positive transformation, not toward petty revenge. The world needs Scorpio, needs someone who isn't afraid to look at the collective shadow, needs someone who can descend into the underworlds and return with medicine, needs someone who loves so deeply they transform everyone around them, needs this courage to die and be reborn, repeatedly, showing that radical transformation is always possible. But the world also needs conscious Scorpio, evolved, actively working on integrating their two faces, using their power with wisdom, choosing the phoenix instead of the primitive scorpion whenever possible, because unconscious Scorpio is dangerous to themselves and to everyone around them. So here's my final challenge to you, regardless of your sign. If you have Scorpio in your life, try to see beyond the obvious two faces. Try to perceive the constant struggle this sign faces between light and shadow. Offer safe space for this person to be authentically intense without judgment. And if you can't do that, be honest about your limitations instead of trying to change who they are. And if you're Scorpio, my challenge is even bigger. Commit to your own evolution. Don't settle for being the scorpion crawling on the ground. Don't get comfortable at the eagle level, even if it's comfortable. Keep seeking the phoenix within you. Keep dying to limited versions and being reborn in more powerful expressions. Keep transforming your wounds into wisdom and your shadow into integrated light. Because in the end, Scorpio's two faces teach us something profound about human nature. We all carry light and shadow. We all have capacity for both destruction and creation. We all face the constant choice between revenge and forgiveness, between control and trust, between closing the heart or risking loving intensely one more time. Scorpio simply lives these dualities more intensely, more consciously, more dramatically. It's not better or worse than other signs. It's just different. It's the sign that accepts being the alchemist, the transformer, the one who isn't afraid to put their hands in transformation's fire, knowing they can get burned, but trusting they can always be reborn. So next time you look at a Scorpio, or at yourself in the mirror if you are one, remember, you're not just seeing a person. You're seeing an entire universe of unexplored depths, an ocean of intensity, a force of nature that carries the power of death and rebirth in every cell. Respect this power. Honor this depth, embrace this duality, because Scorpio, with all their contradictions and complexities, is one of the most transformative gifts the zodiac offers to those who have the courage to dive completely. And now, my final request to you. If this video touched something in you, if you recognized yourself in these truths, if you discovered aspects of Scorpio you had never noticed before, I need you to do 3 things right now. First, leave your like on this video, because content like this, deep and honest about the signs, needs to reach more people, needs to reach that Scorpio who's struggling with their own shadow, needs to help those who love a Scorpio better understand this complex person. Second, subscribe to the channel and turn on notification bells, because this deep journey through the signs is just beginning. Soon we'll dive into the 2 faces of another sign with the same intensity and honesty you just experienced. And I guarantee every sign has its dark secrets and hidden powers waiting to be revealed. Third, leave your comment now. Tell me, are you a Scorpio, or do you know a Scorpio closely? Which face do you recognize more, the magnetic and healing one or the shadowy and vengeful one? Have you lived any situation where you clearly saw these two faces in action? Share your story, because I read every comment, and these real experiences are what makes our community so special. And if you want to go even deeper, share this video with that Scorpio person in your life. Send it on WhatsApp, tag them in the comments, show it to them, because sometimes we need to see our own nature reflected back to fully understand who we really are. Remember, Scorpio is never just one thing. It's always the two faces dancing together, creating this hypnotizing complexity that makes this sign one of the most powerful, most transformative, and most absolutely fascinating of the entire zodiac. Thank you for diving with me into these Scorpio depths. See you in the next video, where we'll reveal the two faces of another sign that will surprise you as much as Scorpio surprised you today. Until then, keep exploring your own shadows, keep embracing your own intensity, and always remember, in the zodiac, as in life, the most powerful things are always those that have the courage to be completely authentic. Light and shadow, strength and vulnerability, poison and healing. A deep embrace, and may transformation always be in your favor.